Luke, an absolute delight to have you along. Luke Ryan from the Tallaght Inn. First of all, Luke, before we press ahead, tell us who you are and what you do at the Tallaght Inn.
What don't I do? I'm Luke. My day job, I do all the social media, videos, graphics, photos, everything you see online coming out of the Tallaght Inn Railway is usually from me or my friend Matt, who helps me. But volunteer capacity, I'm a pass cleaner, so firing, I'm a guard, I'm a station master. I do a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, here you are hanging off a Hunslet diesel as well on your way up, carrying an old Jeep on kind of up the hill as well. So
it's a fun day.
Yeah, all manner of things. That kind of, for me, kind of sums up the Tallaght Inn quite nicely. But I suppose for people who are not familiar, briefly, what is the Tallaght Inn Railway?
We are a 2-foot-3 gauge, narrow gauge heritage railway, the very first in the world, but we'll come back to that. We run through the stunning, Eryri Snowdonia National Park from Tywyn to Abergynolwyn in northwest Wales.
Absolutely, it is stunning. It's near my folks live near there. It's the second nearest. Actually, that's not true because we've got the Radal as well. My parents live in Mid Wales, and we're positively surrounded by little railways, and it's an absolute delight. There's we've got Corris, we've got Radal, and of course Tallaght Inn as well, which is marvelous. So, right. The reason we're talking about this is because of this kind of, the connection between Titfield Thunderbolt and the Tallaght Inn. But briefly, there has been this 4K restoration. I'm here holding the kind of the box, which is very nice. Thanks to Studio Canal. But how have you been involved with this new release of the original film?
Yeah, so the Tallaght Inn Railway provided inspiration to the original film. So when they were doing this, they reached out to see what kind of artifacts we had that related. So we've helped provide some of that, and also helped with a new special feature on the Blu-ray book.
Yes, of course, which we'll touch on that a little bit later on. So, here's Titfield Thunderbolt. Why is, it's these images that seem very familiar. Why is Titfield special for the Tallaght Inn, and I suppose vice versa? What is the connection there?
So the screenwriter Tebby Clark visited the Tallaght Inn in its very early days and was slightly baffled to see a poster saying "volunteers wanted" on the trains. And then he came up with the idea for the film there with a small community keeping the local line open. And he conveyed with the volunteers and the managers of the railway at the time to figure out all the little stories that occurred here, which end up in the film. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a delightful, Titfield Thunderbolt is a delightful story, but so too is the story of the Tallaght Inn. So I thought maybe it'd be worth whizzing through a bit of the history of the line. Do stop me at any moment where you've got fun extras to add in, Luke. But I thought, I'd hammer through a bit of a quick history, which, we start in amongst the hills, the kind of Cambrian hills at the southern end of what is now Eryri National Park. Snowdonia for the sasses who might be less familiar with its appropriate and correct name. Bryneglois, there's a slate quarry in a mine that sort of starts working from the 1840s in a pretty major way. So substantial workings from that point. But it's all, it's pack horses, it's using the tracks that are there now. It's a very slow, kind of not hugely industrialised affair, relatively speaking. You'll notice in this picture, though, that there are some rails. Actually, local mine tracks probably were being put in from this point. So from the 1840s, as anyone watching Rail Natter knows, railways started in the UK from the 1500s. And so railways were being employed right from the outset up in the mine complex and the quarry complex. However, the Americans decided to start shooting, the USians decided to start shooting at each other, and in 1864 we had the US Civil War. Now, this did a number of things. One of the key ones was that it massively interrupted cotton supplies, and so those supplies thinning for the massive and extremely lucrative northern mills in England resulted in a need for those mill owners to diversify to maintain their kind of asset portfolio, essentially, in modern parlance. One big mill owners were the McConnell family in Manchester. Yep. And actually, the Dr. Dathis Gwyn's done a talk on this, and some of the staff, the workers, were very much kind of in sympathy with slaves and the reason for fighting that war. So they were really keen to diversify. Yeah, okay. Yeah, very interesting. So led to Slate.
Yeah, absolutely. So that diversification results in a whole heap of cash being spendable on modernising, expanding and linking the rest of the country to the mines and quarries at Bryn Eglwys. Bryn Eglwys, by the way, is Chapel on the Hill in Gymraeg, if I'm not mistaken. That is what Bryn Eglwys means, yeah. My brother's called Bryn, which is a funny joke. Anyone called Bryn out there, it's a funny joke because it means hill, and it's quite funny when in utero, when, anyway, blah, blah, blah. Right, so that's always an easy way for me to remember what hill is in Gymraeg. So, and here, by the way, this image is nice for another reason. This is the big, I would say, probably the most impressive and imposing bit of civil engineering on the line. The viaduct at Dolgoch. It's part of the logo. I mean, where's my car keys? My keys have the nice brown fob ash to the Talyllyn, which has this on it, which is lovely, with the little train rolling over the top. But also, this image is quite important because I think it's the earliest photo of the railway as well, right? So it's,
around 1867. We've dated it to thereabouts.
Yeah, so that's 2 years.
Earliest one we have.
So 2 years after the line opened, notable that there is steam locomotive operation 2 years after opening, which is very interesting.
The loco arrived a year before that.
Interesting. So the line opened. So the railway opened in 1865. Was horse and sort of mule worked for the first year of operation. Well, I suppose uniformly worked by pack horse, right, until the first steam locomotive arrived in 66.
No. So the pack horses would have taken the slate down the old route.
Oh, I see. Okay, understood.
The tramway linking the quarry to the railway, which was horse worked. 1865 is when number one Talyllyn arrived.
Yep.
And it was steam hauled
steam
on
from the start,
from the outside.
Okay. Yeah.
Very start, taking the full and the empties back. So steam narrow from the beginning,
and it's I know you're about to tell me that its purpose was pretty diverse, but by and large, as a primary enterprise, it was bringing slate down the incline from the mines and quarries, linking into the Talyllyn, kind of close to and above Abergynolwyn, which we'll talk about in a minute, the village, and then taking them down the valley to Tywyn, to what is now Tywyn Wharf, and then putting them onto the standard gauge mainline railway. In fact, I think I don't know whether it's Talyllyn, but certainly around Wales, they didn't transship the wagons. Often they just picked up the wagons wholesale full of slate and actually put them into into mainline wagons, which is kind of there's some fun images that you can find online of kind of that, which is quite fascinating.
A bit further north than the TR.
I think you're right. That was some of those northern the northern lines, the sort of the Welsh Highland perhaps, that was doing that, and the Blaenau Ffestiniog line where that was happening. But anyway, it's quite interesting. So, slate being one of the great Welsh sort of outputs. Yeah, it's interesting to see the different ways they did it. Anyway, so down Stone Wharf, but that wasn't the kind of the end of the story, because there was quite a diverse use of the line, and the key thing you've told me, Luke, is actually right from the outset, it wasn't a side effect. We're talking about the 1860s. The mixed traffic usage of railways was well established by this point. Railways, as the modern railway, was a very well understood technology when this was being built. So we look here, the picture of Abergynolwyn is interesting because, well, it was Luke, you were telling me that actually it was the hub of the railway for a long time from
the very start. Because Abergynolwyn village was a very small hamlet. The McConnells took over the quarry and they built Abergynolwyn village out. If you look at Abergynolwyn village, houses are Manchester and Lancashire architecture.
Oh, yeah, okay,
but in slate. It's really odd. So Abergynolwyn is where all the quarrymen lived and worked, and the incline house in the picture there, that fed, because the station was a little bit out the village, through railway fashion. They had a direct link with a rope-worked gravity incline to take coal, fish, food, livestock up and down the railway into the hub of the village. We think that's the only example of a rope-worked incline serving a community as well.
Fantastic. So it was, you have lots of evidence of what that incline moved. You're saying that it moved all sorts of stuff. You're saying Lincolnshire sausages and Whitby fish.
We've got the some of the later goods books still, but you can imagine those things come into the main line at Tywyn, go to the wharf station and get sent up on a Talyllyn train to Abergynolwyn, and they can enjoy the delights of Whitby fish in Abergynolwyn in the 1850s.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So
enabled.
Yeah, absolutely. But a key point here is that, given that this is the 1860s, talk about the fact that the modern railways well understood, this was a passenger line from the outset. It wasn't that it was a useful side effect to pop some carriages on.
It was the first narrow gauge railway, we think, in the world. I will always say we think until someone proves us otherwise. But we believe the Talyllyn was the very first narrow gauge railway to be built with the intention to run steam engines and passenger traffic from the outset.
From the outset, yeah.
The picture shows a lovely typical Talyllyn train. This is around 1910s-ish.
Okay, yeah.
And you've got your two carriages, the Brake Van, and a line of wagons just either full of goods for Abergynolwyn or slate empties going back to the quarry.
Back up the hill.
And that was the predominant way they ran the trains. It was mixed because they had a one engine in steam policy because there was no signals, no tokens. If you only have one engine in steam, you can't run into anything
crash anything else into it. Yeah, exactly. Unless, so long as you've secured the brakes on anything you've parked at the top of the hill, of course.
Yeah. So the line had two locomotives. This is number 2 Dolgog, 4 coaches, the Brake Van, and then 100 wagons. That's a typical one.
Yeah, it's really nice that Dolgoch still is still running. Right, is runs today, right? Dolgoch is still
both original locomotives,
which is so lovely, yeah.
And the original passenger carriages were probably, again, we think, we're the only railway in the world that can say much rebuilt. We're running.
Yeah, it's a Trigger's Broom situation for sure.
Absolutely,
but the soul of them is still original.
We didn't change it all out in one go. A bit's changed there, and then there, and then there. But anyway, we can say we still run the stock the railway was opened with, carriages and locos and the Brake Van.
That's just incredible, absolutely spectacular.
It's special thing to have.
We'll get to some other. I need to talk about the heart and soul of Talyllyn later. Do not let me forget. But anyway, our history. So this ended up being a pretty substantial railway operation in its own right. You got pretty substantial complex that started being built down the hill. Closer to the mainline railway, you start having much more substantial sheds for maintenance. A pretty substantial complex down at the bottom of the hill, just a little bit up from the wharf. Anyone who knows the Talyllyn knows that the wharf. There's the kind of the area there, but actually the hub of working, the exciting bit where you can see people milling around repairing stuff, is a little bit further up the line after you've been on the train for a little bit, and that was what it did. Quite a lot, right up until the point that it didn't. Well, maybe not actually. Maybe it never really stopped. But there were basically its original purpose, if you like, or one of its key instigating purpose, perhaps, was kind of curtailed by the fact there were a massive series of collapses within the mines in 1946, which rather abruptly ceased operations at scale.